Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thanks for joining me today for manual versus automated penetration testing on AWS. So why did I pick this topic? I've been seeing a lot of arguments online for manual pen testing or automated pen testing, kind of going to either extreme, which one is better and why. So I thought we'd talk about that. And I wanted to show you some of the things that I do when I'm running a pen test. So argument number one is we don't need a pen test or assessment. We run automated scans every time we deploy something. So we know that our stuff is secure. We run the scan. We even run the scan in production. So why do we need a pen test or why do we need assessment? And sometimes I even hear people say we don't need a security review. Why do we even need a security team? Yes, I've gotten that argument before. So that's one side, which is kind of one extreme. On the other extreme, I've been seeing a lot lately about people who are reviewing after a pen test, reviewing someone's report that was delivered, and these are experienced pen testers, and they're saying, this is an automated pen test, it's bad, it's evil. I understand their argument, but we're going to take a look at some of the ways you can combine the two potentially and think about those arguments a little bit more. So what's the point of this argument? Why are we having this argument? What are we trying to do when we're running a penetration test or a security assessment or even a security review? The point is security, right? We're trying to get security, and both of these methods are trying to tell you if you have security problems in your environment. What is security really? Any of you have been doing this for a long time, you know this. It's really about risk management. We can't have perfect security, but we're trying to reduce the things in our environment that are going to cause a security problem, and that's called risk management. And what we're really trying to do when we're doing risk management is we're trying to take away, what I like to say, take away the chances that we're giving attackers to break in, right? So if you have a house and you have 20 doors on your house and you lock one, the attacker still has 19 chances. And if you lock 10, they still have 10 chances. If you lock them all, well, now they can't get in the doors, but of course there may be other options. They could get in the window, or they could come on your roof and go down the chimney or something, But we're trying to reduce the number of chances. There's a lot of really low-hanging fruit, really obvious problems that are causing data breaches. So if we can eliminate those, that's good, right? And then we have the more complex things as well. So let's talk about the benefits of automated testing. Automated testing can go a lot faster than a human. And so if you have something where you know the inputs and you can produce common outputs and you can evaluate that in an automated fashion, it's going to go way faster than a human can go. So that automation is really powerful. It's really good to use. There's nothing wrong with it. It's achieving our objective. We want to find the things that are causing problems, and we want to reduce them in our environment to improve the security, right? So that's a good thing. So I'm all for automation. I've always been for automation, and I loved moving to the cloud for that reason, because I used to run things in a data center, and with the cloud you can sort of automate some of those things you were doing manually, make less mistakes. Obviously if you're going to do a code review or something, this automation is going to go much faster than a human looking at the code. However, manual testing also has some benefits. And so for the people who think, we can just use automation, they're trying to sell you these automated pen testing tools and give you reports, or maybe they're just running a scanner and giving you a pen test report, and it's automated. It looks fully automated. There's some downsides to that. They are doing a good job of finding the things, but maybe the scanner is missing something. I'll give you an example. I was following a very well-known security tool that does automated scanning and pen testing and so on. It's a well-known tool. I could see the name in the logs and things. I knew I was following it. That tool missed a lot of things on this particular report I was on. I had a number of different applications I was testing, and one of the applications I kept having problems with, and what I noticed was the scanner was running. It looked like it was running, doing fine, and as it was going along, I noticed that it was having, the whole log was full of authentication failures. So it wasn't doing anything. It was getting an authentication failure every time it hit a page. So I had to go in and spend some time with the team and figure out, why is that happening, fix the problem. Once I got past that error, I found loads of really basic flaws, like cross-site scripting and all sorts of basic flaws. So the scanners are great when they're working, but you still need someone to go in and make sure they are fully working. And we're talking about a pen test. The scanners are going to produce thousands of different things potentially. Like when I do a penetration test, I may have just hundreds of things I have to look through, and some of those are false positives. So you have to go through all those and weed them out. And then in addition, you want to take those things that you find, you want to validate that they're actually good findings, and then you want to show the impact of that finding. So you're going to take that a step further. You're going to take that finding and you're going to try to show the client specifically in their environment, here's the impact, here's what else I could get into. When I'm working on a penetration test, I was a developer, so I always try to explain things to developers in ways they can understand, so they can go back and reproduce the flaw and understand how it works, not just, hey, you have this problem. There are some other benefits for manual testing as well. If you have an application with logic, it's hard for that scanner to figure out that logic and to understand how that application works and find those errors. So you have to do some reverse engineering. So for example, if there's a 5-step process, I'm going to try to mix up those steps. Maybe there's a checkout and I can skip the step that does the payment and get straight to the receipt, right? Logic like that, there are some things that if they're known processes or known kind of tests, the scanners will be able to figure out. But there's some things that are just very nuanced, and it's not going to work too well. I was just watching another talk recently, right before this, and there's a particular vulnerability that's in your AI LLMs with the different tools that are used for that, and the scanner literally cannot find it. So you have to know that exists. You have to know what tools you're using and so on. If you're doing a pen test and you know what tool the customer is using, you might go in and test for that CVE because you know it exists, and the scanner's not going to find that for you. So there's a lot of different things where the manual testing will help you. Another one would be a lot of the JavaScript apps lately. A few years back, a tool like Burp wouldn't find any of the URLs because they're sort of dynamically generated. So Burp is a tool that I use that does this type of scanning as a starting point. And it has improved, but I was literally just doing a test. I think it was my last test, and the scanner couldn't find any of the URLs in a one-page app. So I had to go through and find them all and sort of insert them so I could work with the scanner and do some manual testing as well. So there are a lot of cases where those scanners are not going to find things. You're going to need a human to go in and look and review. So let's talk about automated versus manual reporting. And this is the one that kind of really caught my eye because there's a particular pen tester I know who's probably one of the best in the industry. And he said, raise your hand and promise me that you will never give a customer an automated penetration test report. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute. What do you mean exactly? I know what they mean. If you're running a tool like Burp, let's say, and I don't know how many of you have done that, but if you run a pen test, a lot of you are probably going to use Burp to go scan an application. It's going to print out a report at the end, and it's going to show you all the findings. Well, that's not enough. I mean, a typical pen test, you're not just going to print that out. You're going to go and do some additional work to validate and so on. So I know what they're talking about when he says don't give them an automated report, but I do use automation to create my reports. So when I create my reports, I use a combination of the two, and I'm going to show you what that looks like. I think that the problem I have with that argument is going to give people a perception that if they ever see something that looks automated and it's not carefully handcrafted and hand-typed, it's bad. I hope to convince you that's not necessarily the case. I say, why not both? So one of the things that I did when I started doing penetration tests, I learned sort of traditional methods through all these certifications and classes, and I would manually type up my report and I'd format it. Now there's probably different trains of thought on how you're going to do those reports. Some people create reports with like 9 things on it. I've seen these types of reports from well-known companies. And other people will give you a longer report. Some people will say longer is not better, and that's true. But there's this age-old thing in security, which is, are you going to have false positives, meaning things are listed that aren't really a problem? Like, okay. The worst thing, in my opinion, is when you have the false negative. You have the thing that's missing that is a vulnerability, but the person didn't tell you about it because A, they couldn't fully exploit it, or they didn't have time. So they only report the things that are, really exploited. I kind of take the approach of, if I didn't quite get to it, or if I'm not quite sure, but I think it could be a problem, I'm going to go ahead and put on my report and explain that. So the problem there is sometimes the reports are a little bit lengthy. I definitely prioritize them. But let's say I'm going through my report and I have a bunch of findings, and now I realize I did some manual tests, I found some manual finding. I need to insert it like right in the middle of my report. Well, all the items in my report are numbered. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have to go through and manually renumber all those things, right? And at the top, I have a summary of all the things I found and the quantities of things that I found. So now I have to go and redo that. And so I found myself doing a lot of manual formatting. This is supposed to be bold, this is misspelled, whatever, and going through and doing all these things manually, and I was immediately like, no, I'm not going to do that. So I want to automate these things. So I started creating an automated tool to create my reports. If you look at my report, you might think, well, this is automated, and according to some other people, it's bad, right? I just did some sort of automated scan. That's not what it is, though, actually. I have my data separated from my report formatting, so I can go through and I can take all my findings and put them into my data. And if I have some sort of manual finding, I can insert it into my data. And if I have some sort of finding that I need to delete, I can just delete it. And when I regenerate my report, all the formatting, all the numbers, all the quantities, all that stuff is done. And how does that help you as a customer if you're getting a pen test? Well, I'm not spending my time doing busy work, typing and formatting things. I'm actually spending my time pen testing, which I'd rather be doing. And so there are also some parts of the report that aren't going to change. So I'm going to be copying and pasting these things around. So if you look at what I have here on this slide, I have a description, first of all. So this one is SQL injection. It's heavily redacted, obviously, but the SQL injection description is not going to change. If you go up to OWASP right now, you're going to see a definition of SQL injection. Why am I going to type that over and over again? Not. It's going to be automated. You also have the description of how you're going to remediate. So you could take a particular flaw, like SQL injection, and say, I'm going to remediate it by telling you how to change a specific code in your specific problem. But that's not what I try to do. Wherever possible, I try to give you a holistic solution. So with SQL injection, the way you fix that is you run stored procedures, or you use prepared statements, and you get rid of your exec statements. And almost always that will eliminate SQL injection. I'm sorry, if you like ORMs, you should get rid of them if they're not using stored procedures. And that's a way to fix SQL injection across the board. So I have that in a common definition. I don't need to retype that every time I do a report. So the next section is the analysis, and this is where it gets manual. So in this case, I had SQL injection. And I can't remember if this one was found by the scanner. I found it manually. It was one of the two. But what I did was I took that SQL injection and I built upon it. I showed how I could query different ways. I showed the customer screenshots of that SQL injection so a developer or a QA person could go back and repeat what I did, and then they could fix it and repeat my test again. And then I also put in some additional steps to show, besides that initial SQL injection, I could go and steal basically your entire database, potentially. And so I go through these steps and explain everything. And this is where the manual part comes in. So I get the basic report formatted, print it out, and then I can insert this additional manual content. And then your resources, that's going to be the same every time, right? You're going to have these resources that are, like OWASP links or what have you, and then there's some request and response, right? So there's a lot of things that you can automate so you're not just doing busy work on the report. So if you see an automated report, it may not be all that bad. And here's my findings. So, if I have a lot of findings, I'm not going to regenerate this table every time and go manually, which I was doing in the beginning, try to add up and make sure and double check, triple check that my numbers are right. I just know that the automation has calculated for me. So that's better, right? So my take on automation versus manual is let's get the best of both worlds, right? There are some things that are really good for automation to do because it's repetitive, it's taking your time, the automation can find it faster, and there are some things that are really better for a manual approach where you need to go in and actually go in deeper, test things manually, make sure they are actually flaws, also lateral movement, so you get into a particular host and then you try to move to something else and see if you can access something else in the environment. Those are the types of things where you're going to go do manual pen testing. Some people also do things I don't do, which are like physically testing buildings and things like that, social engineering, which I don't really do. But there are cases where that manual testing is going to be really helpful. But in terms of saying all automated reports are bad, this is the part where I was kind of, oh, wait, that's not good. The other part I had a problem with, I saw someone say, we don't need security reviews anymore. We have these tools. And I've also had sort of developers when I come in to do a pen test, and they're a little bit leery, like, why do I need this test? Because I already run all these tools. There's a lot more you do on a pen test is above and beyond just what the tools can do themselves. So if you want to learn more about automated pen testing and security on AWS, I'm actually writing a blog series right now, and I do it as time allows. So I don't always have time to finish what I start, but I have been working on this series where I'm running my tools and trying to put them in a container and then use those to generate my reports. So I started this little framework out where I was going to basically run the tools and show people how I'm doing this, but it turned into this bigger thing where it became a much bigger thing where I'm trying to build out a whole secure pipeline. But I am working on this as time allows. It's on my blog, so you can go up to Medium, sign up, and follow me there. And I will put these slides on Twitter as well. So that is, in a nutshell, what I had to talk to you about, and I'm happy to answer questions if you have any.